Okay, we are still in the East End of London, and at the moment we're actually outside what was one of the biggest employers in the area in the 1800s. This was the Charrington Brewery. So you can imagine big dray horses taking barrels of beer around all the various hostelries in the area. Fred Charrington was born in 1850, and he went to a prestigious school, had a very good education, but he had to cut short his education and he continued his studies at home because he was a little bit sickly. But he carried on, and at one point in his teens he had a kind of a religious experience and he became a very devout Christian. And then he went on to work with the family business. But at one point he was walking home and he passed a pub, and there was a lady with 2 children, and she went into the pub to ask her husband to please come out and not drink all of the wages and give them some money for some food. And the drunk knocked the woman to the floor. Fred went up to intervene, and he was knocked to the floor as well. But at that point he had what he called a kind of a Paul on his road to Damascus awakening, because he looked up at this drunk, and behind him was a big sign saying Charrington Inn, and he realized that his fortune and his happiness was being built on top of untold misery by intemperate drunks that he was facilitating. And he wrestled with himself then, and he said, look, what I really should do is to try to kind of help these people who have fallen on hard times due to alcoholism, poverty, prostitution, or I can continue with the family business. And he did. He went towards a life of philanthropy, and his father cut him off, and he was, in a really difficult situation. But then his father was involved in a riding accident, fell to the floor, and he was very ill. And Fred visited him, when he was ill, and they made up, and his fortune was restored to him. And then he was on a mission, and he went around and he tried to, legislation was coming out at the time about illegal drinking dens and brothels and so on. And he was like a detective. He would go around with his little black book and write down what was going on in these areas. And he would report it to the police. And he was instrumental in having 200 brothels in the area closed down. The brothel owners didn't like this, and neither did the people who were running these illicit drinking dens. And he was beaten up a few times. But the zeal of the convert was in him, and he was actually taken to court one time for kicking one of these thugs. And it's reported that one proprietor of a brothel, when she knew that he was on his way, apparently she had a heart attack. But he continued this work until the day that he died. And to this day, there is a charity in his name that runs a drug rehabilitation program that is in-house, and it caters to people who are drug addicts and alcoholics and so on. So there's another phenomenon from this area who righted the wrongs of the era. Okay, thank you very much for watching.